Everybody's talking about the energy crisis, prices rising, systems breaking, air thick with the consequences of all that we've been doing for the past 100 years or more. So we know about solar, we know about wind power, we know about lots of things, but what about hydrogen? It barely gets a whisper. And today we're going to see if we can change that. So I'm joined with Iris Burtz and Shakil Giordani, and they're from the Higher Academy EU project. They're going to help us unpack the truth about hydrogen, what it is, what it isn't, and why it must be the quiet force behind net zero. So before we dive in, my name is Haroon Rabbani. I am from Sustain Midlands, and we are doing the Sustainability on Conference on 30th of October. If you haven't booked your place, why not? We've got over 100 people. We're probably going to get more than 150 people coming to this event. And it's all about not the sage on the stage, but more like all the gurus on the side. We're going to come together and share ideas, possibilities, not just talk, by the way, ideas where we can cooperate, collaborate, and create a much more greener, sustainable, a truly sustainable West Midlands and actually beyond. First of all, let me bring in Iris. Iris, welcome and tell us a bit about your company and your background and why you got involved with hydrogen.
Thank you, Haroon, for the introduction. We're really pleased to be here and also being part of the unconference because that's a concept that's very close to our hearts. So I'm Director of Burtz Associates. We're an organization which works with digital creative storytelling, and we're really focused on access, accessibility, and diversity and changing who is at the table, who makes decision. We were invited to the Hydrogen Academy project in 2023, 2024, and I looked at it and thought, we're not really a science company, but we can help unpack things, we can help diversify who's in the conversation, and also really sort of helping to make it understandable, because I don't know that much about hydrogen, or didn't. So it's quite good to have somebody on board, I believe, who doesn't know and doesn't speak sort of, the expert language, but actually tries to make it accessible. We work with a really exciting team of young professionals. So I brought somebody along here who can help me with the technical stuff.
Wonderful. Shakil, you're the expert here. Tell us a bit more about your work, what you've been doing, your projects in the past, your PhD projects and so on, and how you are involved.
Thank you for having me on. My name's Shakil, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Birmingham. So I specialize in alternative fuels that can range anything from 100% renewable gasoline to completely different compounds such as hydrogen, ammonia, stuff in that respect. So I've been involved with research in hydrogen all the way back through my time at undergrad. My final year project was based on converting diesel engines to hydrogen running. Right now, I work more to do with renewable gasolines, but I'm also looking at projects to do with hydrogen. So I'm really passionate about this, and I really believe in this technology, and I'm taking every opportunity I can to sort of tell people about it and, push this agenda forwards.
Many people still see hydrogen as a future technology. What's actually happening now across Europe with hydrogen innovation?
Right. So got plenty of projects going on all across Europe and the world for that matter. It's not just Europe that's pushing it forwards. There's plenty of fuel cell technologies available. So we get hydrogen buses. So for example, in London, as far back as maybe even 10 years ago. So this is not anything like in the pipelines or pipe dreams. This is like real life technologies. We get hydrogen buses. So like in my area, one of the buses that I took to school was powered by hydrogen, which was crazy, right? So I was at school in London. I left London in 2020. So this was at least 5 years ago. Recently, we had an interview with an Italian professor I don't know if Iris, you want to talk more about that, because he told us a really interesting story about how fishes can be used to produce hydrogen, and they use yeah, I know. Yeah, I had that same reaction when I first learned about it. They use their excrement that contains ammonia and they break it down to produce hydrogen out of it. And I just think that it's really interesting to see sort of even alternative technologies pushing forwards hydrogen production in particular, and how you keep it sustainable all the way through.
Iris, share with us a bit more about this fish story.
When we were at the meeting of the Hydrogen Academy, and I was like, that is really interesting. So to me, the idea that something that's a waste product, and also if you think of a fish farm, they will have a problem with all the waste product in the water. So it will pollute the water in the long term. To actually use that, to then use the hydrogen to heat their facilities is just absolutely amazing. And I'm really interested in these really real live applications that are already happening, like Shaquille described here. There's also, I know in Stoke-on-Trent, there's in the potteries industry, they're using hydrogen kilns because you need gas to get certain results in pottery, for example, for the chemical reactions. You can't just do it all in electric kilns. It doesn't work because certain gases don't work. So it's this kind of example I find really exciting. But I think if you want to really know how the chemical story is about the fish, I'll have to take you back to Shaquille, because he also did the interview in Italian, right? Shaquille, to get integrity.
So I'm not a chemist, I'm an engineer. So I know it's a decomposition process from ammonia. It breaks it down. Ammonia is NH3. So they have like a catalyst, and it just produces hydrogen as a byproduct of the breakdown process. Close to home, for me, myself personally, one of the things that I was working on is, this is my master's project. I was looking at hydrogen combustion. So many people don't know this, but you can, with some modifications, introduce hydrogen into a standard gasoline engine or standard diesel engine. I think that's great because a lot of the cost barriers to do with even electrification requires people to buy completely new cars and new systems and all that. But I think repurposing old systems to run new fuels, it's like teaching an old dog new tricks, right? Like, we can become more sustainable cheaply and effectively. And although there are problems with pure hydrogen combustion, a lot of the times you want to have a dual fuel setup. So maybe 20% hydrogen and like 80% gasoline.
That's actually amazing, because that was one of my biggest concerns is these electric cars is you have to buy them brand new wholesale. When I say wholesale, I mean you cannot use the same kind of engines. That's something that is, we by the way, we need to do an entire separate episode for every single topic we're even touching upon, just to let you know. And if you're watching or listening for the first time, my name is Haroon Rabbani. I'm joined by Iris Pertz and Shaquille Giordani, and we are talking about hydrogen as an alternate source of energy. When people hear about hydrogen, and safety comes up first, safety fears, how valid are those concerns in today's context?
So one of the main sort of drawbacks of hydrogen, there are obviously drawbacks with everything. You can't get like a free lunch, right? So one of the main drawbacks about hydrogen is that it needs to be kept at a very low temperature, and to keep it in liquid form to make better uses of space. Hydrogen's energy density at room temperature is much worse than gasoline or diesel. But hydrogen's energy density by weight is far superior. So the best way to keep energy density high is to store it at a low temperature in a pressure vessel in liquid form. A lot of the problems with it comes to do with the pressure vessel. So obviously when you have a pressure vessel, there's always, a risk of it rupturing, right? However, as engineers, engineers are going to be the people designing these things. These designs go through countless testing, simulation. We have massive margins of safety within the industry in general. Some components in, for example, it's a bit unrelated, but like in airplanes have like margins of safety of like 10 or 20, crazy safety margins. So for accidents to happen, and obviously they always can be accidents, there'll have to be extreme circumstances, and as engineers we prepare for extreme circumstances. So most things are very safe once they are produced, mass produced especially.
So it's not too dissimilar to the containment of liquid nitrogen and liquid carbon dioxide. Obviously, this is a much more lighter gas. So I don't know who wants to answer this, but we talk about solar and wind. Why do you think hydrogen often is missing from sustainability conversations?
I think people always get sort of caught up with some of the investment that might need to happen. So, like, people say, "Oh, we need to invest in infrastructure," but we have invested in infrastructure. We always have done. We've just become, I think, a little bit complacent. In Europe, I think it's very interesting. In our schools network, we work with South Africa, for example, and they're much more up for doing things. So I think the way how I understand it, why hydrogen should be in the conversation, and I don't know why it isn't, but I think it maybe isn't because that might be shut down by the big oil and gas suppliers. Is maybe something I would think because it's not that convenient to have other ideas. I think it should be in the conversation because it could be a good way of storing energy while there's peaks with wind or solar. Like there's night when there's no solar, but you might have produced a lot of energy in the day. Where do you store it? And batteries, as we know, are not the complete answer. So I think this is going back to Shakil, where I think that could be a really important discussion. I don't know why it's always been sidelined. I mean, I had a really interesting, just to finish my thought, with interesting conversation with National Gas, who are really keen. Also, much like Shakil says, they want to maybe mix hydrogen in the gas pipelines because rightly so, we have a massive infrastructure thing in all of Europe, or especially in the UK. We have gas heating everywhere and gas cooking. Should we dismantle this all? In many of the areas, like when you look at Birmingham, we have all these terraced houses. We can't have heat pumps. It's almost impossible. So we need to build either a whole new system or we can adjust the system to a different model. So that's one of the things I think where hydrogen is being overlooked. So in terms of energy storage, it's really interesting. I can tell you a life story because I'm a storyteller, and then I'll give it back to Shakil. We were on a call with our Spanish partners who were doing research into hydrogen. And as we all know, Spain went offline recently because it went dark. And interestingly enough, our partners were still online because they had hydrogen to actually have some electricity. And to me, it was like almost like a practical demonstration of why mixing resources can be a really, really good thing.
It makes total sense that the thing is the realities, and this is not any kind of conspiracy. The way the world is run is primarily profits. I'm not going to pretend for a moment that any of our listeners are naive. And the question is, how do we take all of this into the general public's hand? I'm not talking about changing political systems, but how do we take more responsibility? But it is something that needs to be discussed. And I hope Richard Parker, West Midlands Mayor, is watching, or his team are watching this live or recorded. This is a discussion we need to take forward. So we've got so much more questions. Let me ask you this, Shakil. How does hydrogen compare to batteries in practical terms? When does it make sense and when does it not make sense?
It's a great question. I think that a lot of the sort of discussion pits battery technology against hydrogen technology, when in reality, I think they don't necessarily need to compete with each other, but they should work together in like a harmony to create a total solution for sustainability. So, for example, like I was mentioning like hydrogen buses and like hydrogen cars, and I was mentioning earlier about the energy density problems and the storage issues with hydrogen. A lot of applications, especially sort of small cars and stuff, hydrogen wouldn't actually be super practical in reality. However, when you get up to the industrial scale, when you have big mining operations or massive machinery like that, hydrogen makes a lot more sense because maybe you're in the middle of Australia and you're like in the middle of the outback and you're mining for, I don't know, like cobalt that you need for batteries, for example, to link everything together. You could use massive hydrogen tanks to power these machines. Another very useful thing that hydrogen is far better than batteries, in my opinion, at least, is for energy storage. So like Marcello was mentioned, I keep bringing up Marcello. He's great guy, great knowledge. For example, if you have a massive like a hydroelectric plant and you have overspill, massive rain or something that you need to get the water down out the reservoir, a lot of the time, like even today, we waste loads of energy through doing that because the grid can't handle a big surge of energy. So for example, the energy that is powering my laptop right now was produced in a power station somewhere in this country like minutes ago. We don't have storage systems like that. Energy is produced as the demand requires it. So when there's not demand and we have an excess of energy production, a lot of energy is actually wasted. So a good way to use hydrogen would be to have electrolysis plants on site at these energy production facilities, so that you can then convert the excess energy into hydrogen, which can then be converted back to electricity to feed back into the grid whenever the demand actually requires it. I think the main use that I think people should really know about and really, really push for, because it would save electricity that is produced through renewable means.
I'm really excited about this. I'll be honest with you. I'm like chomping at the bits because the opportunity. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been since I was a kid, and when I look at the opportunities, because it's like the light. I've got light shining on me. Spotlights here. It's like light. Light is only useful when there's dark, and we're going through a very dark state in humanity's history and the planetary history. And I think opportunities are massive. I really, really hope that we worldwide, but certainly us in the West Midlands for Sustainability on Conference, we are bringing all the good people. We definitely are already, but bringing more and more people together to have these conversations and talk about collaboration. Just a couple of other things, Shakil, before we move on to the academy. So one big bit is that hydrogen is too expensive or inefficient to produce. What's the reality behind the cost curve?
I think this links back to what I said in response to the last question, in that I don't necessarily think that hydrogen and electricity should be direct competitors. I think every system has its place in a renewable grid. I will admit, again, I'm not going to sit here and like lie or try to sugarcoat things. Hydrogen is more expensive to produce from electricity. It's derived from electricity in a green hydrogen system. So I'm not going to lie and say it's going to be cheaper. It's not cheaper. But I think it all has its place in the grid, and everything should be used to work together to find the best solutions for each usage case.
Without going into overly too much detail, only because we have people at different levels of knowledge, there's a bit of confusion between green, grey, and blue hydrogen. When I say confusion, I have no clue. It's the answer. So Shakil, can you just quickly, briefly explain what are those three types of energies?
Yeah, of course. So green hydrogen is what we're about in the sustainability world. So this is hydrogen, excuse me, produced from electrolysis of water. So you have electricity, your water, and basically run a current through the water. H2O is water. You split it up into its oxygen and into hydrogen, H2. So that's how you get hydrogen in the most clean manner. The electricity that's used for this process has to be produced through sustainable means. So you can imagine you can't have like a coal-fired power station producing hydrogen through electrolysis. That would just make no sense, right? Because you're still burning coal in the end. And that is actually a method of producing hydrogen. I think it's called like brown hydrogen. There's like a lot of colors. There's a lot more than just the three that you mentioned. Blue is produced through gas reforming. So this is sort of like medium impact on like the environment. So it's using natural gas. So a lot of, for example, coal-fired power stations are being converted or being repurposed to use gas or like pellets or something like that. So gas is naturally occurring in the atmosphere, in the ground. Burning it does produce CO2. It does produce pollution. However, it is much cleaner burning than old technology like coal. And then finally, grey hydrogen is produced through steam reforming, and this uses hydrocarbons. So this is like very high impact. And I think this method should be avoided where possible. A lot of hydrogen is produced in the world, like currently. Most of it is grey or blue right now. But with sufficient investment, I think we can pivot that more towards green hydrogen, which is obviously more sustainable, better for the environment. Everyone's happy.
Fabulous. Thank you for that explanation. And we will have replay will be available obviously here on LinkedIn and Facebook, but also on our Sustain Academy. Yeah, mixing up all the names. Sustainability YouTube site as well. So make sure you subscribe and register to that. Now, let's talk about, speaking of academies, Hydrogen Academy. Iris, tell me about the purpose of that academy, please.
The High Academy was initiated by Professor Robert Steinberger Wilkins of University of Birmingham, also of University in Prague. The idea really is to look at hydrogen education that's happening across Europe. So there's loads of pockets happening everywhere, some of them in Birmingham, at Southern City College, for example. And we wanted to map what's going on. So people who want to educate themselves or join education in that field can actually have a one-stop shop to look at what's happening. We're working with 17 partners across a number of European countries, and our particular role is to involve schools. I'm personally very keen on that because of all the things like what you and Shakil said, for example. We need to really get young people involved to do more innovative thinking around this, because, you know, I'm excluding Shakil from this, but you and me, we're all of the older generation. We might say, oh, this is not possible, that is not possible. Already feel the energy. You know, we feel it, like with Shakil, we really feel your energy saying, yeah, we need to do this, we need to work about this. And I think the more we can work with younger children right across to actually say, this is happening, this is an opportunity, these are the bits where it might work, but there might be different things. But if we don't give young people the means to understand, we can't progress as a society. You know, we can't grow the new engineers because other people are constantly stepping in this space and saying, oh, you become an influencer or something. You know, you can also excite people about engineering. So the idea is map it across all education and then getting networks on board, people on board to actually share their knowledge on this platform. So we also have YouTube channels, we've got a website with resources.
If a school teacher is listening in, obviously this is not part of the normal curriculum at this moment in time, and it takes a long time for the education system to catch up with everything else. So as a school teacher, pretend I'm a school teacher, what's in it for my students? So how's that going to benefit my students' GCSEs or whatever it is that they're aiming for?
So it is part of the curriculum in chemistry and physics, isn't it, Shakil? It's just touched on very narrowly.
Yeah. You get an electrolysis unit, like a little bit on it, but not like super in depth with like the usages of like hydrogen in particular.
We forever push kids into sustainability. We say, oh, you should collect recycling, you should go and litter pick. And I'm saying, actually, why don't we get children in the driving seat and actually learn what's important in terms of social responsibility? It can fit in with the UN goals, which are being implemented in schools, UN goals on sustainability and social responsibility. It's about learning how to lobby decision makers. It's happening. So it can work in very many different ways. And we've got a number of really interesting schools who are interested in implementing learning resources. For me, it's really about using the knowledge and excitement that young people bring to tell a story. So when we talked to Robert Steinberger Wilkins, we interviewed him, and he said also, if young people don't know about this, they can't lobby. You feel totally disempowered. And like you said, we feel we're in a dark time, lots has to change, we don't know what to do. So if we learn about something, that's also part of the curriculum. So it fits in with geography as well. It fits in with PHSE. So it can fit in with very many different areas. We have done a mapping exercise with some of our teaching partners to help, but we're also keen for schools to work with us.
Okay, so you're listening to the conversation about sustainability and particularly in hydrogen. Here's what I would recommend, because I've been in the schooling workshops, talks, presentations for the past 2 decades, is actually we need to create within the West Midlands a kind of like a forum from within Sustainability Unconference Forum who actually specifically work with young people. Let's make it happen. And this is actually, it's interesting. By the way, if you're watching, listening, and you're thinking, what the hell's Haroon doing? He's not asking questions at this moment. Yeah, this is what happens at Sustainability Unconference. You hear ideas, you go, I know we can do something here. So, for example, my best friend David Heine, who's a motivational speaker, he's spoken at. He, on average, has in the past, I don't know what it's like now, 50,000 students in a year. On average, that's just him. And he's part of a network of speakers who go in. Then there's another friend who's I'll connect you to. Her name is Claire Young, who runs School Speakers, which is basically for speakers going into schools. That's all they do day in, day out. And then we've got Employability UK, who do employability related stuff, skills building for young people. So there's a lot of people within our, certainly my network, where we need to bring them together. So the Sustainability Unconference, part of that is having these very discussions, connect, cooperating, sharing ideas, challenging, thinking, like I did at the approaches, what the hell's it got to do with the education, right, that they're currently doing? You mentioned that it's part of chemistry. Yeah, you've got to do chemistry in the first place. How many students are doing chemistry compared to how many who want? So these are things where we challenge, you support, you think of ways to cooperate, and you might say, you know what, let's collaborate, let's create something. So we're going to have this discussion at the conference and beyond. Now, I'm sorry, you can tell I'm excited about this. So moving on. So if I can wave a magic wand, or if we can wave a magic wand, these students have gone through learning about hydrogen through your academy, through your workshops, and so on. Fast forward 5 years from when they started learning, how's the world going to change? How are they going to change? What's going to happen?
I think for me, it's really, in 5 years' time, I would love to see young people produce material we can then distribute, that it actually comes from the bottom up, helping parents. So we work with co-constructive methods like the unconference, helping parents and decision makers to unpick the myths. I'd love to see people like Shakil in front of children who are much younger, who are much more representative of the West Midlands, especially here in Birmingham. We really say, like, green hydrogen is a thing that can play a part in this whole mix. Let's work on it. Let's unpack it. So, we need people good at video making. We need people good at writing. This is English literature skills. It's not like only chemistry. This is about, let's tell a story and let's get a movement. I really love your idea of building a group in the West Midlands of schools and young people on the table saying, so we've just taken the idea to the eco committees of the Central Region School Trust and said, this is our idea. Are you interested in helping us? And already it was popping up. Oh, can we do this? Does it have to be a worksheet? We're like, no. Can we have a quiz? Can we make a treasure search? Can we tell this story in different ways? And of course, we tell the story of hydrogen, but we also tell the story of sustainability, as Shakil so rightly points out, that we can help with these peaks where we lose energy, where we lose stuff we produce that we need. So it's about, and there will be always things we can't think about just now.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about school trust, for example. A lot of people might be thinking, oh my God, I've got this idea, I want to get it out. How am I going to get it out there? Well, this is it. There's no such thing as a self-made person. I don't want to use the word millionaire. Billionaire means nothing, but self-made person, everyone is part of a team. We cannot work alone in silos. This is part of why we created why Beata created Sustainability Unconference, is say, everyone's doing things in silos. Why do you come together? I was only involved as a delegate last year. Why did you get involved, Iris?
I think sustainability is just really important. My background is creativity. I have worked with German organizations placing technical engineers into companies in the UK, and I've learned how many other things as well. Worked in big conference. I've learned how this interconnectiveness really can grow a really, really important empowerment. So rather than being empowered by others, it empowers each other. So I went last year and I really found it really, really very fascinating, amazing. We made lots of interesting contracts because you work on a similar level like we do in our organization. We have different people with different skills. You sit together and say, this is the problem. And I think that there's too many silos in the world, and we need to just stop it, because climate change is not going to be silent. Yeah. It is here. It's going to affect us in every way. So the problem is...
What a quotable point. Climate change or sustainability, climate change is not going to be siloed. That is the quote of the year. I have to say, best word, just to let you know. Creativity, this is what they come up with. For those of you watching and listening, go to sustainmidlands.uk. Make sure you sign up. Your ticket pays for food. We're all collaborating to make this happen. Get involved in the conversation, because when I look at the list of people who have signed up, over 100 people have signed up, 120 or so, and that's not even including the volunteers, young people who are involved, by the way. I look at the list, I go, wow, this is a bit of a who's who of sustainability. So make sure you get involved. sustainmidlands.uk. UK. So Shakil, first, what's one hydrogen innovation that you're most excited about?
It's a great question. There's just so many to sort of pick from. From my own, I think I'm always going to go for the hydrogen combustion in normal, engines, like dual fuel engines. That's sort of my foray. That's where I study. That's what I do. That's why I do the PhD, right? I don't just do this because why not? I do this because I love it, and I think this is the future. So I think I'll have to go with that. Repurposing engines, keeping waste down, and just reusing all technology and making it more sustainable for the future. I think that's my favorite, definitely.
Beautiful. Iris, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I'm excited about absolutely what Shakil says, diversification of what sustainable means we have. But I love the idea of the fish story, as we call it in the team, because there's something we consider waste, and I think we live too much in society calling stuff waste. So this is this sort of saying, actually, let's look everywhere how we could change how we work and how we think. So that's for me really one of the highlights, because it also illustrates it so clearly.
Fabulous. We are definitely out of time. For anybody who's watching, make sure you click on their link. If it's not there, it will be there very shortly. Click on the link, go to visit their website, visit sustainmidlands.uk. It is about a conversation leading to co-creation, collaboration. Thank you once again. See you tomorrow, actually, where we will be interviewing the founder, the amazing Beata Pessian. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Bye.